Hello and welcome back. I'm your host, Dr. Pete Economou, and here we go again. Another episode. It's getting to be that time of year. You're likely feeling overwhelmed. It's funny. I could probably have that topic at many different times in the year, and probably hold true. Kind of like a horoscope. Horoscopes, you read them and they make sense to you just because of the way that they write them. But thinking about all the sort of political propaganda that's in our faces every day right now, and that this, election just happened. And this time of year, I always find it's confusing. In fact, I was with my clinical team this week and I said, buckle up. This is that time of year where, we're trying to embark on the holiday season, winter break for us in the world of academia and college sports. So here's a question. How do we stay sane during this turbulent time of year? Whether it's election year or anything like that. And are you feeling stressed? You angry, frustrated, overwhelmed? So all of this time of year can have a lot of ability to send us into a tizzy. So if I think about the election stuff, right? There's this article that was in Time Magazine, How to Survive Election Season Without Losing Your Mind. And it's worth a 10-minute read. So, this article cites a lot of my colleagues and things of that nature because we are, as psychologists, at the forefront of understanding how to deal with these challenges. Challenges are normal. You can never escape challenge. The only thing you want to do is try and understand how you respond to challenge. So that's the thing I work a lot with the clients that I work with and athletes I work with. How do I respond to challenge? It's not how I feel. It's not what I think. It's how do I respond to what I think and how I feel. So American Psychiatric Association poll found that 73% of adults in the United States are stressed out about the political race. So the Pew Research Center, they found 65% of Americans always or often feel exhausted when thinking about politics, and 55% feel angry. So what do we see? More than half of our country. And that's a really important stat because we know that we're sort of like a pretty clear 50-50 split, 48-51 in the world of social science and scientific method. That wouldn't be statistically significant probably with this sample size, and so this show is not about pointing out the obvious. We're here to help, like especially the obvious of like whether you're right or wrong and whatever your political views are. That's certainly not what On Air with Dr. Pete's going to be about. Today's episode is about how do you create a plan for your mental health, no matter what is going on, and whether you're celebrating the election or whether you are commiserating and feeling bad about the election. These turbulent times call for a special kind of toolbox. You hear me talk a lot about that, whether it's been on When Eats Meets West, here on this episode on Air with Dr. Pete, any of the talks that I've given professionally, always looking at what's your toolkit. Nothing's easy in life, so that's for sure. My mom always was a very positive person, and she would say, life sucks and then you die. And there's some truth to that, especially in the Zen world. You think about suffering and how natural suffering is. And so what's your toolkit? So you cannot have this you have to limit your media consumption. And so while I want you to be listening to this episode and sharing it with all your friends and families, you want to limit it. And that's also why our episodes are not going to be that long. So that's boundaries. It's boundaries for me. I don't want to sit here and talk to the mic all the time. I need to make sure I'm getting out and kind of doing the things that are also important. And sometimes that means sacrifice. Sometimes it means I have to miss other things in my life. Be intentional about what you're sharing online. I was talking with athletes recently, and sometimes I try and mess with these algorithms where I'll like things that I don't really like. But because otherwise you get stuck in this vortex. You get a vortex of all the same information. And honestly, it's really dangerous if that's the only place you're getting information. This is where I'm thankful that, as an academic and someone who sort of seeks intellect, I'm going to get it from diverse sources. I'm not just going to stick with one thing. And, so be mindful of that and be mindful. What's your mindfulness practice? Mindfulness is on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmental. So what do you do for that? Some examples might be, for me, my mindfulness practice is meditation, but it's also, driving and just driving. It's going on a walk. Sometimes the walk could be in the middle of the day where I'm not going anywhere. I'm just walking. I did it the other day. I was in the office, and one of my offices is like an inside office, so no windows. And, it's been nice here in the Northeast. And I was like, I gotta get outside, And so just went outside and did a lap around the stadium. And there's a nice hill there. So also you kind of get a little short of breath, which feels pretty good too. So step away from technology. That's key. Here's your biggest tip. The phones do not belong in the bedroom. So I understand that all of us have people we care for. We want them to get in touch with us. They'll get in touch with you. 2, 3 in the morning, it's unlikely you're going to do anything anyway. So there's going to be some kind of emergency protocol in place where the person is that they can get to where they're going. And I know that might sound heartless, but sleep is critical. So being sure that your sleep hygiene is key. And so those are 2 suggestions there. 1, get the phone in the bedroom, and sleep hygiene. So what am I doing to create my bedroom in a way that feels wonderful and feels calming? The bed should just be for sleep and sex, meaning that there should be no TV or phones in the bed in that kind of way. When it comes to any of these conversations, limit your topic, your conversation. So that doesn't mean, stick with the people that think like you. It means you can have difficult conversations, but you don't want to always be around difficult conversations. Every battery dies at some point. And so you need to kind of make sure that you're charging them, and by limiting that and limiting the amount of heated discussions you get into, that can help. Take action. So value-based living means I take action for the things that are important to me. And so maybe that means getting involved with some kind of community resource or things of that nature. And so volunteering, lots of research has shown that volunteering helps us feel better. And so perhaps you can consider doing some volunteering. Physical exercise for sure. And sometimes just what kind of music you like. So these are some sort of techniques that can help us, for that. So, you want to create your own list. And honestly, y'all, this is like what I like about my job is that there's no one size fits all. So there's always going to be a different toolbox, diversity of toolbox for one person to the next. And so while the umbrella by which I formulate or help people formulate their toolbox is surrounded by mindfulness or some kind of value-based living, I think you just need to figure out what works for you. And so Dan Harris, many of you may have heard of him. Dan Harris, that's funny actually. I'll tell you a quick story. Dan Harris, I always have his picture in my head. And any kind of media thing I've done, I often see him before because Dan Harris was very open and talked about his first panic attack was on live TV, and so every time I go on live TV, I see that, and it's scary. It's not great because it's a reality. It's what the brain does, and so the brain kind of creates all these stories, and so seeing Dan Harris, and so that panic attack on air led Dan Harris, to really find his mindful journey to heal, all the stress and panic that he was going through. And so he has, 10% Happier, great book. So with all the great, amazing mindfulness tools out there, Dan Harris has given us, a lot to that we can benefit from. So thank you, Dan Harris, for that. A lot of times, even in my Zen training, you realize that it's the suffering that brings people to, to the place of mindfulness. Sometimes I see that when I go on like my different retreats or yoga retreats, there's a lot of people that are there just trying to find themselves or find peace. And so that's what we're trying to do here on Air with Dr. Pete. Ways that you can find peace. So Dan Harris had given us 8 sanity-saving strategies for the election season. And so he says mindfulness, develop awareness of your thoughts without getting carried away by them, limit your news consumption, number 2, diversify your news sources, practice loving kindness meditation. So this is cultivating warmth towards others, even when you disagree with them. It's one of the best strategies we can do from a psychological perspective. Use effective communication skills, take action, never worry alone. So stay close with those that you love and are really connected with, and practice self-compassion. We've talked about that with MB Paradise coming up, and that self-compassion. A lot of listeners might think it's silly. But we will break it down for you. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up with that is this like social media world that we live in, and sort of how that is impacting the way that we interact with people, especially like post-election, where I'm certain that many of you listeners have had at least one or two people that you unfriended, unfollowed, or perhaps you're just cutting out of your life. And I don't know if that's healthy. I think boundaries are key. As a behaviorist, we focus a lot on boundary living, and so you definitely want to be boundaried. But just cutting someone out because of having a differing opinion is not what life is about. Life is about, and this is one of the things about, I understand that a lot of people sort of weaponize diversity, equity, inclusion, but if you think of diversity of thought, I want you to think about that, because that is, or just even as I say that, what does it mean to you? Diversity of thought. A lot of us, and especially with social media, the algorithms creates this vacuum. And so we are just constantly and incessantly exposed with no diversity of thought. It's basically this linear access, linear exposure to things. And, if you feel like you want to unfriend somebody, recognize that feeling inside of you, because that's your feeling. And I'm not saying don't feel it, because actually that's the opposite. In the mindfulness world, you have to actually feel it. But maybe just ride the wave. So for me, I always say, and any listener out there and people I know, that I love Oreos. And so I need to ride the wave of Oreos, meaning sometimes I just don't buy them, so they're not there, which is avoidant. But if I do buy them because I'm having, guests over or just want to have a little treat, I can't have them all the time. And I can't eat an entire bag or sleeve all the time. And so being able to recognize that I have this sort of feeling and this desire to take this action, and then not doing it. And that's what we're trying to do with all of this. And so, I think it's not black and white. So I'm not saying never unfollow. I'm just saying, observe your desire to unfollow or unfriend, and, see if it's just about diversity of opinion or diversity of thought, because that's what helps us grow. And that's what I am so thankful for, for my Zen training, but also it's one of the positives of higher education, academia, which has also, been weaponized and criminalized these days. And it's not perfect. I mean, show me a system that is perfect. And what I mean by that is what organization is flawless? There's nothing that's flawless. And that's what, in the world of mindfulness, we have to embrace the imperfection of the things. My feelings are not perfect. My thoughts are certainly not perfect. And we have to understand that the flaw does not mean eliminate. The flaw just means interact with in a constructive, effective way. And I think that's what Dan Harris was saying, with some of those those 8 tips, those 8 sanity-saving strategies. He was saying, use effective communication skills. You might not know what that is, because your knee-jerk reaction might be, I'm going to just lash out at you and you're dead to me. Well, that doesn't help us. And so what you want to do is find some flexibility in all of that. So this is, this can feel scary. You could feel joyous, whatever it is. The one thing that stays consistent is you and your ability to care for yourself. So that is the one thing I often work with clients, is that you cannot control your environment. You cannot control how people respond to you, what they say, what they do. You can't even control how you feel. You only have the power to manage your response to certain situations. So remember, November is a time to be thankful. And so that's what you want to do. So tune into the episode on gratitude and happiness, around this time of year. So we have some really great guests coming up. Our schedule's booking out. And so be sure to tune in every Friday for some new content. And as always, I want to hear from you, officialdrpete.com. So this show is truly meant to be a safe space, and a space where you can offer support and guidance. I hope that by listening to our show weekly, you get some insight and feel empowered to live healthy, successful lives. So if you found one thing that you've been working on here, please share. We'd like to hear from you, and you can find a way to do that on officialdrpete.com. As I mentioned earlier, tune in next week as we'll discuss the meaning of happiness. So thank you for tuning in today. If you love this episode, please head to our social channels. Everything's at Official Dr. Pete. And follow, and share our podcast with your friends. Until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.